Coming up next on This Week in Computer Hardware, GTC 2013, it's the future of NVIDIA. Corsair's Vengeance Extreme is the fastest memory ever, 2TB SSDs, cheap 3TB hard drives, puppy Linux on Raspberry Pi, and the search for a good set-top box. All this and more coming up next on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust. This is Twitch.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 210, recorded March 21st, 2013, the future of NVIDIA and the fastest memory ever. This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Ting.com. Ting is a new mobile phone service that makes sense. Save money with Ting, where you pay for what you use, doesn't require a contract, and offers unlimited devices on one pooled plan. To save $25 on your first Ting device, visit twitch.ting.com. That's twitch.ting.com. Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware. I'm your host, Patrick Norton, and this is the show on the Twit Network where we want to bring you the best and most useful news about PC gaming, computer hardware, Macintosh OS X, and occasionally, yes, we do love the tablets because mobile is taking over the world of computing. Usually I'm joined by Ryan Shrout. He is traveling this week, and I apparently cannot manage to put down times when I'm scheduling guests, so I'll be running solo tonight. More's the pity for the chat room, but the chat room will be able to mock me in full. So it'll be fun, actually. It's been an interesting week in computing. Samsung finally released its 2013 lineup. Props to I love when the chat room wipes up. Bring the chat room back up again. For the folks listening in stereo, where did you get your monoprice this morning? I didn't. I forgot that they were supposed to post the new 27-inch WQHD monitors on monoprice this morning, which actually makes me wonder, did they sell out again already? So we'll look that up. Monoprice.com, of course, being our favorite source of inexpensive cables. This is not a sponsorship when I say that. They just make really nice inexpensive cables, and most people don't need to spend $100 on a cable. If you need style and platinum-plated connectors to prove that you are a truly geeky human being. Oh, and the 27-inch still not in. Next ETA for the 27-inch IPS LED Crystal Pro monitors from Monoprice is $329 2013. Those are the $390 27-inch WQHD, the 2560 by 1440 monitors. Or you can go to where they've been buying them for a long time, over to the eBay, and get them drop shipped from Korea, which everyone we know who's gotten a Yamazaki Cat Leap has been really happy. So anyhow, getting a little way from the monitor, going inside the PC. Something pretty funny, right? Samsung this week debuted their new HDTVs, including a $40,000 85-inch 4K HD TV at the top of their lineup. And, of course, their less expensive F or more affordable F model shipped this week. Right now, if you're buying an HDTV, you're probably going to be buying the new models at the highest possible price for them. Over the next 6 months, as we get closer and closer to Christmas and closer to CES 2014, those prices will start to drop. So aim your credit card accordingly. From the strange but insane news, memory is cheap, right? Not so much if you're looking for Corsair's Vengeance Extreme, the world's fastest rated PC memory kits. Jeremy Hellstrom wrote this up for PCPer.com. This is kind of unhinged. First of all, it's a limited release, right? This is obviously for people who need the fastest car and the coolest house and the biggest yard and the hippest neighborhood. DDR3 3000 2x4 gigabyte kits, $750. Two, not one, but two motherboards with BIOSes capable of hitting that speed and, quote, perhaps higher for those of you with exotic cooling solutions using the included cooler that comes with those. It's insane. 1.65 volts, which is kind of high for memory. 12, 14, 14, 36 on the timings. It is pretty crazy, and you can order those directly from Corsair. One of the things we should point out for people who are not spending $750 on just their memory, is the reality is for normal human beings, memory speeds are almost undetectable in day-to-day usage, whether you're using Word documents and the internets or Skype. Skype, of course, being its exciting self these days, or if you are doing something more taxing, like running high-end video games or playing around with video editing or photo editing. Memory speed, not as critical to performance as you might think. You need it to get the last little bit of performance, but man, I think you're looking at like the last 5%, and hopefully the benchmarks will continue to hold that out. It's been an exciting week. If you have... and I'm going to be honest with you, this is for Traveler. I love you, man, in the chat room. I'm going to leave most of the conversation about this to our man in vacation land this week, Ryan Shrout from PC Per, to talk about this. But GTC 2013 was this week. The future of NVIDIA was basically laid out. They went over the road plan for what's coming up for NVIDIA GPUs, not just two new GPUs, but, of course, additional Tegra processors. And CUDA computing obviously being a big deal, right? Because NVIDIA is a company looking for a bigger model than just 3D acceleration for gaming, but of course high-end supercomputers. And CUDA computing is critical to that, along with accelerating things like Photoshop and Premiere. What's really interesting, probably the biggest thing in the story on that one, looking at the future of NVIDIA and props to, I want to say, I think Tim Very wrote that up for PC Per. I'm just going to quote this straight. The NVIDIA VCA, a GPU virtualization appliance that hooks into the network and can deliver up to 16 virtual machines running independent applications. GPU-accelerated workspaces can be presented to thin clients over the network by installing a grid client software on the user's workstation, and a pretty serious list of specs on that box. So the idea is that, and it's kind of funny. We see it goes, okay, you're going to all the computing powers on your desktop, all the computing powers in the cloud. This is, of course, leaning towards the cloud or on the network if you prefer not to use cloud-like marketing terms. But if I can get the machine to scroll a little bit, the GridVCA is 2 Intel Xenon processors with 16 threads each. So it's got 32 threads inside the box, 192 to 384 gigs of system memory, 8 Kepler-based GPUs, basically 2 GPUs each. So it's got 16 GPUs, 2 Xeon processors, up to 384 gigabytes of memory, and 16x GPU-accelerated virtual machines, and it all fits into a 4U case. That's one of those big, dense cases that you usually see being used for SANs and stuff. $25,000 for the smaller version, the maxed out version $35,000, the one with 16 Kepler GPUs, which is just crazy. And the licenses, basically, let me quote this one. While both GridVCA devices can support unlimited devices, the licenses cost $2,400 and $4,800 a year, respectively. So this should hopefully be a source of monies for our friends over at NVIDIA. And of course, though, the big thing for them is chasing the ARM market with the Tegra chips. Logan and Parker, the next two, both will support the CUDA 5 stack and OpenGL 4.3 out of the box. Logan has a Kepler-based GPU on the chip that can, quote, do everything a modern computer ought to do, unquote. Parker will have a yet-to-be unveiled, and I'm quoting Tim here, a yet-to-be-revealed graphics processor, the Kepler successor, 3D FIT transistors. Interesting. Total package will be about the size of a dime, and it will be jam-packed with some really interesting 3D performance. Those are actually not boxes of Cat5 cable in the background. We've been rebuilding the network in the lab. I wish those were big boxes of Cat5 cable. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. James T points out in the chat room, the big blow is Nexus 7's decision to drop Tegra in favor of Qualcomm. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the battle. Qualcomm obviously having a huge chunk of the mobile market right now. So let's talk about 2 terabyte SSDs. If you have all the money, this is pretty crazy. SSD Review did the test. 4 LSI Sandforce SF1222 controllers, a Micron JMB 393 SATA 2 RAID 5 controller, all combined together to create a 2 terabyte SSD called the K8-1920E. Jeremy wrote this up for PCPer.com. Somewhere in the neighborhood, sit down, people, because we're going to tell you what 3 terabyte normal drives cost in a second, and this number is going to seem even bigger, $5,000. So essentially, the Micron RAID controller is configured as a 4-port hub, and each of the controllers, separate controllers, is a 512 gigabyte SSD. And basically, after its formatted, SSD review found it had 1,788 gigabytes left over for storage, quote, which did not support trim as it is technically behind a RAID car. The performance was on par with expectations, keeping in mind the difficulties that SandForce controllers have with incompressible data. First of its type, a 2 terabyte drive. It is not going to be cheap, at least $5,000 for that one. So, kind of a frightening thought. Also kind of frightening, actually kind of pleasant. 3 terabytes hard drives are getting cheap. I nicked this story from Alan Malventano on the PC Bird podcast yesterday, and their kind of end of the game wrap up. We've got a link to, I don't know, Burke, if you can post up that link on Newegg. But if you're looking for a 3 terabyte drive, remember there was the horrible, horrible tsunami, the flooding that took out a huge chunk of the drive industry. And more importantly, or more sadly, it took out a huge chunk of humanity. But the drive market's pretty much settled down to the point where you're looking at 3 terabyte drives for $140. Seagate Barracuda 7200 3 terabyte drive, $140. Western Digital Reds, which you only need if you're running a RAID type box, $170. Those are usually a little more expensive and a little more difficult to find. They're kind of on a not quite allocation, but they're difficult to find. Western Digital Greens, $140. So basically looking at $140 to $160 for the creme de la creme of 3 terabyte SSD. So I think we can officially say that the 3 terabyte hard drives. SSDs, 3 terabyte SSDs do not exist yet. When they do, they will probably be more than $5,000 and slightly rare. And yeah, tourists, if you're talking about 2 or 3 years ago for $140 3 terabyte SSDs, it was about 2 years ago, and we've really just now seeing the last of the hard drive prices flattening back out. Either that or they've just done a really good job of price gouging around here. So hardware at E3, we're all waiting with bated breath or otherwise to find out the latest updates and consoles. Obviously, Microsoft's going to be a big thing. And, of course, we expect more details on the PlayStation 4. But Logitech is introducing 4 new mice, 2 new keyboards, and 2 new headsets. I would also expect to see headset releases from Turtle Beach. Creative's been doing a lot of stuff lately. It's going to be interesting to see because I have just saw, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to start writing down notes, but I just saw a layout of the E3 show floor. E3, of course, being the big video gaming, the big annual, the CES of the video game world, taking place down in LA in the near future. And I was surprised at how many hardware manufacturers were taking up a lot of space on the show floor and a lot of prime real estate space. Turtle Beach being the name that really stood out. Turtle Beach is pretty much all about the gaming headsets on that one. And where did we go? There it is. Oh, and I almost forgot. If you're looking for the creme de la creme of AM3 Plus motherboards, Josh Walrath over at PC Perspective has written up the motherboard you want to be looking for, the Crosshair 5, the Asus Crosshair 5 Formula Z. This is the go-to motherboard. If you have the money, this is the best motherboard out there for the AM3 Plus processors, or the AM3. I'm sorry, it's just been so long since I've seen an AMD motherboard review. I was like, oh, it's so nice. So Josh has reviewed several Asus products, the Republic of Gamer units primarily. And this is actually a pretty decent performing motherboard. Quote, Asus certainly has the market for top-end AMD boards cornered. But to put this into perspective, this is a $225 motherboard for a top-of-the-line $200 FX 8350. Probably one of the last, if not the last, major motherboard coming out on the AM3 platform. Good-looking motherboard, packed with features. It's really interesting, you know, in terms of additional feature sets in there and the power characteristics. So it's come a long way. Jeremy says, excuse me. Josh says from the original Formula Z or the Crosshair 5 motherboards. Supposedly a more powerful extreme engine, Digi Plus 2, basically to control power on that one. And then going from an 8-2-phase system to an 8-2-2. 8 phases go to the CPU cores. 2 phases supplies the memory controller and an uncore feature of the CPU, while an extra 2 phases supply the main memory. So they've kind of seriously re-architected the power delivery on this one. DDR3 2400 DIMMs are supported, which is kind of funny because the native memory speed of the pile driver CPUs are DDR3 1866. So you can basically overclock the heck out of your memory on the system. 10 SATA 6 gig ports, which I am incredibly jealous of, 2 of which are eSATA. Now I just want to upgrade my motherboard so I can finally get like another 4 drives configured in my system at home, which is running, I think, between the Blu-ray ripping, basically between my DVD ripping drives or Blu-ray ripping drives and disc ripping drives and the 4 storage drives and the SSD that runs it. I think I have 10 SATA ports filled up in my box between the motherboard and some add-in cards on that one. James T says, I drools over the Cross V. So nice set of specs on that one. I don't think it has USB 3.0. So nice looking motherboard, though. It's interesting to see what Asus is coming out with because they're always delivering good stuff. Where did it go? Where did it go? Where did it go? I'm pulling to the last page of the Asus, but this is the editor's choice for the new motherboard, and it's a really, really nice looking motherboard. Josh says stability, feature set, quality, design, overall appeal are tops. AMD enthusiasts will want to take a long, hard look at this board. And I could have sworn I saw an entire section he wrote up with the entire specs on that one. Nice set of cables come with the board. Audio upgrades. Do you ever notice you can never find the one paragraph you're looking for when you're trying to check for USB 3.0 support? And I will have to look that one up. Also, trolls in comment rooms are pretty funny. Yeah, Tourist, of course it has USB 3.0. All new boards do. So, we're going to take a moment to thank one of our sponsors. And our friends over at Ting.com are sponsoring This Week in Computer Hardware. Twitch.ting.com is the website. If you're not familiar with it, it's a new mobile phone service. I've been using it as my mobile, basically to power my modem, my portable internet. I picked up a modem from them for $50 and my mobile hotspot, and I'm spending on average like $9 a month, $6 for the service, $3 for the device, and compared to a $60 a month bill, it's fantastic. The idea is that Ting is going to try to save you money, where you pay for what you use, not what you don't use. There's no contract. You get unlimited devices on a single pooled plan. And we're giving you a discount on your first Ting device. That's the big difference. Is what Ting's doing is they're making you buy your hardware up front, rather than cutting you a fat deal. You know, selling you a $600 phone for $200. You're going to buy a fully powered device. You're paying the freight on the device. We'll give you a $25 discount on that if you sign up through Twitch.ting.com. But it's pretty cool because there's no extra $4 a month for voicemail. You're not paying additional for additional features. You pick your size of your system from your service from extra small through 2XL. And if you use less, they save the megabytes or the text messages or the minutes, and they rolled over to the next month. If you use more, they just step you up to the next level. There's no nasty, punitive, punishing fees if you use 90 minutes of phone service. Like you can get a contract with less than 7,000 minutes of phone service. But you use more minutes, they just step you up to the next plan. It's a graduated price. There's no nasty surprises on the end of the month. And it's pretty cool. If you don't like the service, you can end it. No early termination fees, no long-term contracts. You're not locked down. Essentially, they're an MNVO, a reseller of the Sprint network. They are really trying to keep things simple. Seriously, if you use less than you thought you would, Ting drops you down to the level you hit, credits the difference on your next bill. Caller ID, voicemail, tethering, no additional charge for tethering, no additional charge to use your device as a hotspot. You get three-way calling, call forwarding. Everything is in there with no additional add-on charges, no weird line items on your bill. No, it's nice, right? You pay for what you use, and you pay for the taxes, and it's really clear. It's one of the nice things about this is I can go in at any time and find out exactly how many minutes I've used. I can find out exactly, I really should say, how many megabytes I've used. And it's really clean and simple. Each device costs you $6 a month. Each device on your bill costs you $6 a month. And it's pretty sweet. I actually was trying to bring on an LTE device, which they don't support yet. I got to couldn't do it through the website, called 1-855-TING-FTW, as in for the win, not the other FTW. A real person answered the phone, answered my questions, sent me a follow-up email that summarized everything we talked about and what I could or couldn't do to bring my device on that. And it's pretty slick. And the truth is, most of the time, just go to help.ting.com. In the rare chance you have an issue, you can probably solve it on that. You purchase the device from Ting. They ship it to you in 2 to 5 days. You activate it, and you can port over a phone number or get a new phone number on that one. And they're actually supporting bringing in devices. So if you have an unlocked device from Sprint, you can bring it over to Ting. If they support it, it's pretty good stuff. Sadly, some of the newest LTE stuff isn't there yet, but I'm hoping that shows up in the near future. Do us a favor. If you like Twitch, check out Ting at twitch.ting.com. Save money, better manage your mobile phone usage, and take a look at their savings calculator. I'm sorely tempted to move our phones over to Ting, because I think I would save, according to the Ting calculator, and obviously they're a sponsor, they're trying to make this look good, I would save something in the neighborhood of $1,000 a year on the cell phones between my wife and I. That's really tempting. So is a $25 discount on your first Ting device when you sign up, and you can get that if you go through twitch.ting.com. Check it out. Start saving today. So where were we? Wondering how much 20 gigs will run me. Are we talking about SSDs or traditional hard drives? A minion monkey. Take a moment to say hi to our friends in the chat room. Patrick Norton here. Ryan Trout on vacation, and I messed up in booking my guest and did not give him the correct time for the show. So given that we've been fighting exciting Skype upgrade issues with the cottage, we are keeping it real and keeping it simple tonight. So eSATA drive specs are essentially, eSATA is a lawn dog, is an external connector for SATA. That is its primary role in the universe. So, and yes, 20 gigs will run you a lot on Ting. It's kind of interesting. Sprint now runs for like 60 or 80 bucks, 60 or 90 bucks a month. Sprint will do 12 gigabytes of data. 20 would be a considerable pile of money over that one. So, and at Knox Harrington, I'm going to get this in because Ryan can't reach through the internet and smack me. Quote, Ryan is in hiding after UK's performance against Robert Morris. I'm taking that perhaps our friends in Kentucky lost. So I'm going to let that one go. Actually, Trex, I should talk to Burke more often. Burke, how you doing, man?
Burke's trying to keep up.
I was going to say, I have this vision of you like waving a fan at the Skype box right now and crying out to Tony that you need more power.
No. Tony cannot provide the power I need.
Tony, that's actually kind of cruel. Poor Tony.
Nobody can.
Tons 1999 in the chat room just linked to a Kickstarter project. I'm a little afraid because everybody's either really excited about Kickstarter products or really angry that their Kickstarter project hasn't shipped. I have to actually explain to somebody that they signed up for an $80 Kickstarter project for a product that, while 34 grams heavier and perhaps 3 millimeter wider on both sides, is actually the same 8,000 milliamps. Some of the Kickstarter projects a little not as far out as others. Okay, Project Q, run NEOS, the unique motherboard. 418 backers, $153,116 pledged on a $87,000 goal. 10 days to go. Project by Ranchata da Silva in Alhambra, California. The first motherboard designed to run any operating system you choose out of the box. In 2009, QO made news by opening the first retail store to sell custom-built computers. Really? We've been featured in CNET by Macworld editor Jim Dilramp, as well as OS News, PC World. And they're using the, quote, unique Z77 MX Quo AOS motherboard. This one-of-a-kind board is a selection of high-quality components not available on any motherboard in the market. Okay. They've got UEFI. They've got Intel 77 performance. FW400, so FireWire 400, Thunderbolt, USB 3.0, USB 2.0, and Intel LAN. It sounds like basically this is FireWire on a Z77 motherboard and UEFI.
Actually, I can pull it up if someone can paste the link back into chat, please.
Apparently, sorry, I thought I pasted it into the document. Wonder where I just pasted that. Somebody's going to be looking at me really strangely somewhere. Can you see it now, sir? Yeah, no, tons $19.99.
Yes.
I get that it's for Hackintoshes. I'm just trying to figure out what it actually does. Well, $219 or more, and you get the motherboard. So, tons $19.99. I'm trying to figure out how it's different from every other UFI motherboard that supports Hackintoshes. So, yeah, Ken, this is just a Gigabyte Z77X with some of the PCI Express ports chopped off. Gigabyte is OEMing it. Interesting. We will learn more as the internets reveal it. I do like the idea of having something that makes building a Hackintosh simpler. I'm just trying to figure it out. New Mac clone maker. Wait a minute. News.cnet.com. The story is opening. I love these moments when everything really slows down. Oh, that's why I remember these guys. This is the company that had the storefront in LA that were doing Hackintoshes and got stomped like a narc at a biker rally. I'm actually kind of curious. At least that's how I remember it.
No, I like the reference.
Yeah, I was like, Kyo sounds so familiar. I will say the limited edition complete models are rather gorgeous with the red Tower of Doom. That's actually really gorgeous. Interesting. I'm still trying to figure out what they do that makes it any simpler than any other UEFI motherboard. So 3-year warranty. Stamped any OS, AOS, any operating system. All right. Hackintosh builders, you have another option. Lawn Dog says, Patrick, is it worth investing in a PCI 1X SATA card so I can boot to an SSD using SATA 2 types SSD, which are extremely cheap? Am I going to see anything worth really investing in for performance? And by the way, can the card be made bootable? That is a really good question. Yeah. For that matter, is it worth putting an SSD on a SATA 2 300 gigabit per second bus? Yeah. Kinda. And as Petrie says, good luck with that. I would probably save my money and get a standard SATA 2 type SSD. I mean, basically, if you're talking about PCI, no, Lawn Dog, I would not put PCI. You're essentially creating a RAM disk running over the PCI. If it's PCI Express, it gets more interesting to me. PCI, you're doing it because it's fun and interesting. But I got to be particularly honest with you. At this point, SATA drives are getting so inexpensive. SATA SSD drives are getting so inexpensive. I would recommend you buy, for under $100, you can get a decent SATA drive now. They're even starting to show up used on Craigslist. I would much rather you got a standard SATA drive rather than trying to hack your way into booting one over PCI. Should it work? Possibly. But it's definitely one worth considering. So an awesome hack we should probably talk about before we go. I thought this was really interesting. Hackaday posted this. It's essentially it's interesting. Quote, says Jeremy Hellstrom, it will take a bit of work with a soldering iron, but Hackaday has posted an article covering how to mod one of the GPUs on a GTX 690 into thinking it's either a Quadro K5000 or a Tesla K10. More people will need to apply this mod and test it to confirm the performance of the GPU actually does match or at least compare to the professional level graphics, but the ID string is definitely changed to match one of those two more expensive GPUs. They also believe that a similar mod could be applied to the new Titan graphics card, as it is electronically similar to the GTX 690. Of course, if things going bad during the modification, you could kill a $1,000 card, so be careful. Quote, if hardware manufacturers want to keep their firmware crippling a secret, perhaps they shouldn't mess with Linux users. We figure if you're using Linux, you're quite a bit more likely than the average Windows user to crack something open and see what's hidden inside. And that's how GNIF figured out that the NVIDIA GTX 690 can be hacked to perform like a Quadro K5000, which is a card that normally costs an additional $800. So it's kind of funny to see what happens when bin sorting strikes back and poorly hidden firmware crippling. By the way, if you've never been there, Hackaday.com is an awesome resource. They basically post a new hack every day, and some of them are pretty spectacular. But it's kind of crazy, right? You're basically removing some resistors, some very small surface mount resistors. That first shot on the board is pretty brutal, but basically you remove 2 resistors for a Quadro. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. 3, basically remove 2 resistors to turn your card into a Quadro K5000. Remove the resistor, replace with a 20K resistor, and replace 2 other resistors to create either a Quadro K5000 or a Tesla K10. So I got to say, surface mount resistors are a nightmare. They are not fun, but yeah, as Dale Poco says, you want solder but no smoke. So pretty interesting stuff. Uh-oh. Somebody's wondering if we have fear. Is there FUD circulating in the chat room? I just caught the... yeah, Red Floyd, be careful equals good luck. Yeah, I will say any time surface mount resistors are really, really tough. Oh, and this is interesting. PSA up on reddit.com just posted in the forums. I would work at a major computer parts wholesaler in my city, and I've been hearing with some nasty news coming down the pipe about RAM prices going up fast. Basically, it's claiming that there are a few factors that contribute to this. Windows 8 was launched. Major manufacturers started stockpiling, plus AMD's pile driver, plus the mobile and tablet market are taking off, plus the Chinese New Year. We ordered a bunch of Kingston 4 gigabyte sticks back in October. They were about $16 Canadian. Now we pay double that. Buy up your RAM quick if you need an upgrade in the immediate future. So this is interesting. I would be really curious to see what's going on with that. Memory we actually have talked, the memory prices have been going up, but I think it's more slightly than that. I also think it's also part of the transition to some of the new memory technologies and the market kind of flattening out a little bit as people try to figure out what to do about Windows 8 on new computers. So yeah, I'm going to say, with 1,000 upvotes and 225 downvotes on Reddit, it probably sounds good, but I'll be perfectly honest with you. I always recommend on upgrading RAM as soon as you can afford it. So one last viewer question before we go, unless the chat room pipes up. We got an email from Steve, who's looking for some help streaming video in the house. He says, I want to begin viewing content on my TV instead of my monitor, and I'd like your help with my options. My use case is fairly typical, I think. I want to stream content from the internet, Twitch, Techzilla, YouTube, etc., and possibly premium services. Watch content located on a networked PC, mostly DVDs I've ripped, and be able to save content to that same networked PC. What are your thoughts? I'm looking for something turnkey. I don't want to go home theater PC at this point. My needs are simple, but there are some killer features I'm not considering. Excuse me, but are there some killer features I'm not considering? And immediately the chat lines up. The chat room lines up with recommendations of Roku. Roku is actually a pretty fantastic box. I will say an Apple TV that's been flashed with an upgrade will do some of what you want to do. And actually, even an Apple TV, basically you can stream videos. You can link it to a computer in your house and stream videos. We do a lot of watching on iTunes. And let me pull up the Apple TV link there, and I'll drop that in for you, Burke. But yeah, Roku boxes are amazing. I like home theater PCs, but I can understand not wanting to build an additional PC or spend the money on that one. Apple Core is the ATV flash hack. And it's funny, the internet has suddenly slowed down as soon as I started using Skype. I wonder how that always works that way. But yeah, my personal favorite boxes right now are the Apple TV, the Roku box. And you'd be surprised, it's pretty amazing. Like for most of your stuff you're asking for, Steve, you can actually do there's the page up for the Roku box. Roku's inexpensive. They just updated the interface with the new Roku 3, and they're pushing the interface out, the new interface. So basically, instead of being just the traditional side-to-side menu, they're adding the ability to look at all of your, or more of your icons, your links inside of the Roku box, instead of having the crazy sliding wheel menu. Apple TV is super simple, super inexpensive, available everywhere. Western Digital has set-top boxes. Sony has a set-top box. the really difficult one there on that one of those, being able to save content to that same networked PC. And I got to say, I can't think of a simple network box that actually hacked, flashed. A simple, I'm trying to think what you would, like if you wanted to save YouTube to your streaming network PC, your media server inside your house. I haven't actually seen something that'll do that one. It'll be really, really interesting to see if anybody in the chat room has an idea for that. So if you do, if you know of an inexpensive set-top box that can save content you're viewing back to the media server in your house, do us a favor, email us Twitch, TWICH, @twit.tv. That would be a really easy way to do that one. Apple TV 3. Sorry, I said the chat room just spiked up, and I could see that. But that's an interesting, like, being able to save content back to the device. Raspberry Pi. Yeah, if you want to get DIY, we've been playing a lot with the Raspberry Pi on Tekzilla. I did something that was incredibly foolish. I tried to use a Raspberry Pi as my desktop for a week. It lasted about 2 days once we got it up and running. Puppy Linux has once again become my favorite distro. There's a Puppy Linux distro for the Raspberry Pi. The $35 doesn't come with a power supply, doesn't come with a keyboard, doesn't come with a mouse. The operating systems are free open source Linux, but it's essentially an ARM, dedicated ARM computer. Ryan and I have talked about them on the show a few times. You can get a Google Doc to open inside of a Raspberry Pi desktop. It is slow. So Web 6814, we did review the, if you want to use it as a set-top box, use an OpenELEC or RasBMC. It's essentially XBMC. It's been customized for the Raspberry Pi. That's pretty awesome. Web 6814, we just talked about the 512 gigabyte version or 512 megabyte version of the Raspberry B board. We just did a $100, actually a $75 audiophile starter kit using the Dayton speakers and a tri-path amplifier. We have, let's see, what's coming up next week. We're going to have Lloyd Case on talking about basically a good, better, best set of selections of gaming PC builds in honor of BioShock, or the latest installation of BioShock coming out next week. Adam Susser's going to be on to talk about the new BioShock. That's going to be exciting. Oh, and as Red Floyd kind of points out, consoles, actually. You can't really save from a console to a media streaming PC, but Xbox 360s make amazing set-top boxes, and the PS3 is the best Blu-ray player that we know of now. It is the most fantastically supported Blu-ray player out there. It is fast. It does beautiful, beautiful images. It's one of Robert Heron's favorite ones out there. So it's interesting stuff, ladies and gentlemen. I am going to call an end to this episode of Twitch. I apologize for my scheduling error. Hopefully we'll get Robert Heron on in the future to talk about some of the new monitor technologies that are out there, especially some of the stuff that's coming out on the plasma side of things, where plasmas are getting blacker and brighter, which is kind of strange. The idea that you can actually, the big challenge with plasmas is being as bright as LEDs or LCD displays in bright viewing rooms. And it's a pretty interesting concept that some of the latest round of them are actually keeping the incredibly inky blacks that make them look so spectacular and actually increasing the brightness. So I don't know if that's something you're doing with the phosphors or the general design on that one. But it's really, really interesting to take a look at that. Darkroom 8. If Pi could do Blu-ray, ISO, or folder rips, it would be a buy for me. You'd essentially be doing really, really, really long, slow rips, because a Raspberry Pi, as somebody on Twitter told me, is roughly the equivalent of a 486 PC, single-threaded, kind of feels like. And the Panasonic exit keeps coming up from the HDTV market, single-sided, but they never seem to quite exit on that one. And yeah, Panasonic DMP BDT 220 integrated Blu-ray player. Yeah, they're doing really, really nice stuff. Samsung's doing some really great Blu-ray players. And I should point out that Samsung is releasing their upgrade for last year's models of HDTVs. So you'll be able, the screen's still good, but maybe the processor and the built-in computing powers, the set-top box type features built into the PC, or excuse me, the HDTV, Yeah, HDTV, you're basically upgrading a new PC on the back of your HDTV. I don't even know how to describe that. One last one before we go. Web 6154, how does Puppy run on the Pi? It runs great. It's just running on a very slow processor. I love Puppy Linux. It is super thin. It is super easy. But, you know, if you want to have multiple windows open, you've got to be super patient. It's like running a very old, very slow PC that doesn't have a lot of memory. It's pretty exciting. So, probably more equivalent to a Celeron 300. The Raspberry Pi would destroy a 486 tons 1999. I sit corrected. Puppy should be fairly secure. It's essentially a decent form of Linux on that one, but I will let the Linux people chime in the chat room, because as soon as I start talking about Linux or my difficulties in loading 3D drivers on Linux, people get terribly upset because it works for them, just not for us here in the testing lab. That was interesting. By the way, for anybody who was curious about our Linux driver process, where I wanted to get Steam running on a Linux box, couldn't get a GTX 670 running under Ubuntu Linux. The solution for that for me turned out to be not to do an automatic install, not to do a manual install, not to use Ubuntu 12.10 or 12.4, because it should have worked in 12.4, but to move to Mint Linux, and it allowed me to manually install the drivers. I have, however, received several suggestions on how I might be able to get a GTX 670 running under Ubuntu Linux, and I will keep trying on that one because I love the punishment. Ladies and gentlemen, Twitch at twit.tv is the email address. We love your questions. We'll get more of them in next week. If you're new to the show, if you want to download more episodes, which you'll enjoy a lot more because Ryan Stroud will be here and some of our other guests, you can go to twit.tv/twitch, TWICH, and that is it for this week in computer hardware. I got to go work on TechZilla, and right now I hope you have an excellent evening and enjoy yourselves. I'm Patrick Norton, and that's it for this edition of Twitch.